So you want to use a transfer on death deed for your house, but you're in Florida, and here's the problem. Florida doesn't have one. Now, this question came from Lexi in Coral Springs, and if you're asking it too, stay with me because the details make all the difference. Florida does not recognize a standard transfer on death deed the way that many other states do. But Florida uses a different tool, and depending on your situation, it can keep your home out of probate. Here's the catch. It works beautifully in some situations, and it can seriously backfire in others, especially with multiple kids, blended families, or when the rest of the estate plan is not coordinated. So in this video, I'm going to break down what Florida uses instead, how it works, the trade-offs, and when a revocable living trust is the smarter move. If you're new here, I'm Attorney Otto, and welcome to Q&A with Attorney O, where I answer real Florida estate planning and asset protection questions so you can plan wisely and live with confidence. Now, if you haven't yet, hit subscribe so you don't miss a beat. So let's clarify something at the very outset, something specific to Florida. Florida does not have a statutory transfer on death deed the way that many other states do. What Florida uses is commonly called a ladybird deed, also known as an enhanced life estate deed. People often use the phrase transfer on death deed in Florida because the effect is very similar. Ownership transfers at death without probate. Now, before we compare the tools, here is the framework I want you to remember. In most cases, assets avoid probate in one of two ways, either by beneficiary designation or through a revocable living trust. Which one depends on the type of asset, and in some cases you actually get to choose. Now, for example, some assets are naturally beneficiary driven, like a life insurance policy and many of your retirement accounts, while some assets are better coordinated through a trust, especially when you want control and consistency. But real estate is unique. Real estate in Florida is interesting because you have multiple options, multiple ways to avoid probate. And that's where the ladybird deed and the trust comparison comes in. Here is what the ladybird deed will do. You will keep full ownership of the property and control of your home while you are alive. That means you can still sell the home, refinance it, mortgage it, rent it out, change your mind about who receives it, and you name the person or people who automatically receive the home when you pass away. No probate is required for that transfer. So that control during lifetime plus no probate at death combination is exactly what most people want. Now let's talk about why the ladybird deed is so appealing. The first benefit is that it's focused and it's simple. If your goal is very narrow, I want my house to go to this person when I die, a ladybird deed can be very effective. The second benefit, it's usually much less expensive upfront than a full trust plan. It is a single instrument aimed at one asset. The third benefit, you keep full control. This is not giving away your house today, or you're not handing over the keys to someone. You're not giving up ownership while you are alive. The fourth benefit, it generally preserves the step-up in basis at death, meaning your beneficiary typically receives the property at the value as of your date of death for capital gains purposes. This matters a lot when the property has appreciated. So yes, there are real advantages. Now, like any tool in estate planning, it's about trade-offs. A ladybird deed is not a full estate plan. It is a probate avoidance tool for just one asset. So here are the limitations that you need to understand. Limitation number one is it only addresses the house. That's it. A ladybird deed does nothing for your bank accounts, investment properties, personal property, business interests, vehicles, anything else that might require probate. This is one of the most common half success outcomes that I see. The house transfers smoothly, but the family still ends up in probate court to access money in the bank, to pay bills, and to handle other assets. So yes, the plan works, but only halfway. Limitation two, it does not solve incapacity by itself. So If you're still alive but incapacitated, the ladybird deed does not suddenly activate and help your family manage the property. Remember, it's a transfer on death concept. So you still need good incapacity planning, usually something like a properly drafted durable power of attorney. And in many cases, a trust is the stronger incapacity solution. Limitation 3, it's not flexible for complex family goals. If, for example, you want to structure something like, my child can live in the home until age 30, or the home stays in trust for my minor child, or you may want to say, my spouse can live there for life, but the remainder goes to my children. Or sometimes I hear, I want protections from creditors or from divorce. A ladybird deed cannot do that because the beneficiary receives the property outright at death immediately. And that's perfect for some families, but it can create serious issues in others. Limitation number 4, multiple beneficiaries can be a problem. If you leave the home to multiple beneficiaries using a deed, they instantly become co-owners, and co-ownership requires agreement. So what if one child wants to keep the home and live there? And then another child wants to sell it immediately. What if someone wants to sell it to their friend at a bargain price, a discount? What if someone refuses to cooperate unless they get more money? You may feel confident that your kids get along, and I sincerely hope that they do, but money and real estate can trigger unexpected conflict. Limitation number 5, creditor and divorce exposure for the beneficiary. Now, if your beneficiary receives the home outright, their share may be exposed to their creditors, lawsuits, bankruptcy, divorce claims, and that can affect the property for everyone else if there are multiple beneficiaries. A deed does not give you the same level of protection that a trust can provide. So let's talk about the trust option and see why it's different from the deed that we just described. A revocable living trust, this is what it's called. It's not just a transfer tool, it's a management system. When your home is titled in the name of your trust, it avoids probate, just like the ladybird deed, but it also does much more. A trust works during life and after death. If you become incapacitated, your successor trustee can step in and manage the property without court involvement. That means they can pay your mortgage, help it to stay on track, insurance stays current, repairs can be authorized, the home can be sold if necessary, and the plan continues without interruption. This is a major difference. Planning is not just about death. It's also about what happens if life throws a curveball. A trust allows structure, timing, and protection. With a trust, you can do things you cannot do with a simple deed. You can, for example, hold property for your minor children, right? If you die and your kids are still children, you may want to say, hold it in trust for them until they are adults. You can delay distribution until certain ages. So I know I have a 17-year-old son, he'll be 18 this year, and God forbid I were to pass away while he's still in this age range, I wouldn't want him to inherit a certain amount of cash or, get access to certain assets right away. With a trust, I can specify that I want it to be distributed at certain ages. You can also allow a spouse to live there while protecting the remainder for your children. That's what's called setting up an estate in a way that provides for one person and also allows another person to be provided for in the long run. Now, this is a financially responsible way to build your plan. And coordination helps you along the way. If you structure coordinations, distribution, so the plan is actually working for you, it's practical in real life. You see, a trust coordinates multiple assets in one plan. This is one of the biggest reasons trusts reduce probate risk. A trust can be the hub for your home, your bank accounts, investments, and even future assets you acquire later. When everything flows through one coordinated plan, probate is less likely to sneak in through the back door. Here's a simple comparison to make this clearer in practical terms. A ladybird deed is like a single lane bridge, right? You're gonna get there just one way. It gets you from point A, gets one asset from point A to point B efficiently. A trust is a full roadway system. It manages traffic during lifetime, during incapacity, after death, and across multiple destinations. Let me tell you about a situation that I've seen play out more than once. A Florida homeowner used a ladybird deed on her primary residence. Now, it did exactly what it was supposed to do. When she passed away, the house transferred automatically and avoided probate. The problem wasn't the house. The problem was everything else. Her bank accounts had no payable on death beneficiaries. There was no trust and no coordination between the assets. So the family still needed access to cash to pay immediate expenses, funeral expenses, utilities, insurance, final bills. Because the accounts were in her individual name, probate still had to be opened just to access the money. So even though the home passed cleanly, the family was still in court, still waiting on letters of administration, and still stuck during a time when they needed things to be simple. Now, on the flip side, I've seen the opposite scenario work beautifully. Clients placed their home in a revocable live-in trust and coordinated the rest of the plan. Bank accounts were titled in the name of the trust, proper beneficiary designations were made, and up-to-date powers of attorney. When they passed away, there was no probate, no confusion, no scramble for access. The successor trustee stepped in immediately. Bills were paid, assets were managed. The plan worked the way estate planning is supposed to work. So, which is better, ladybird deed or trust? Here's the honest answer. It depends on your goals, your family, and your risk tolerance. A ladybird deed can be appropriate when the estate is very simple and the home is the primary asset. Beneficiaries are straightforward and you want a clean probate avoidance tool for the property and you understand it doesn't solve everything else and you're good with that. A trust is usually stronger when you want full coordination across assets. You want strong incapacity planning, you have minor children or stage distributions, or you have a blended family or beneficiary concerns. You want control, structure, and reduced court risk overall. And here's something that I want to say clearly. This is not always an either or conversation. In Florida, in my estate planning practice, we regularly use both aspects of this strategically, depending on the client. Some clients use a trust as the foundation and use deed strategies for specific circumstances. Some clients use a ladybird deed because their plan is truly simple and there's no need to overcomplicate it. Some clients start with one approach and later upgrade or switch to the trust plan when life changes. The right plan is the one that fits your life intentionally, not accidentally. So if you're trying to avoid probate for your home in Florida, you do have options. Florida, as I've mentioned, does not have a standard transfer on death deed, but the ladybird deed can create a similar outcome. The trust, however, is broader. It helps during life, during incapacity, and after death, and it coordinates assets so probate doesn't sneak in through gaps. If you're unsure which option makes sense for you, totally normal. These decisions should be made with guidance, not guesswork. I help Florida homeowners structure these plans every day. And if you'd like me to answer your question in a future episode, please drop it in the comments below. Subscribe to our channel so you can soak up all the information to make sure you protect your family and your hard-earned assets. I'm Attorney Otto. Plan wisely, live confidently, and I'll see you next time.